everyone. Happy New Year. We're going to give you a moment to hop on in, but this is an episode of Tempestagi Talk. And even though it is in the opening credits, we've been getting a lot of questions. So as a reminder, Tempestagi, Roberta, is the Portuguese word for
storm.
There you
That's
go.
how we say storm in Portuguese.
Exactly. And this is a podcast keeping a local eye on the Seattle storm. So Tempestagi talk, then we can get alliteration, English. It's all great.
Yep.
All right. Oh, your camera went away.
My camera went away?
It did.
Oh gosh.
Well, we will figure all of that out. We are getting ready to talk about the one and only Madam President, Nneka Ogwumike. On today's episode, we'll break down her numbers. We'll hear from her in some of the things that she talked about in exit interviews and give a sense of what we think will happen because Nneka is an unrestricted free agent. All that and more on Tempestagi Talk, part of Black Rosie Media.
You have three people who are selfless like that, three people who are dangerously disciplined like that, and you have a coach that also embodies all of those characteristics. You can expect good basketball.
I love interacting with the fans. I'm excited for them to cheer for us because it's hell when you come here. I even welcome people that could be skeptical because it's new.
There's going to be a standard of excellence and discipline in everything that we do.
The Pacific Northwest, this area, how passionate they are. It's culture everywhere, but it's great culture here. That's what I want to be a part of, to compete for a championship. That's everybody's goal. And I think it's just how we go about things and habits that we create. I want to be around winners that'll help us get closer to that.
And that's what the fans can expect. And we're going to have some fun.
And welcome to another episode of Tempestagi Talk, hosted by me, Erica L. Ayala, and Roberta Rodrigues. And of course, we are here in a new year. So happy New Year, everyone. New year,
everyone.
There you go. New year, but still the same conversation for the Seattle Storm. Of course, things will change, or we're hoping they will change, but we're doing our player breakdown. So we talked a lot about Skylar Diggins-Smith. We went into Jewel Lloyd, and now we are going to talk about Nneka Ogwumike. But Roberta, before we continue on, and as people join us here live, let me know what's good in your world.
You know what's good? I feel like the interesting thing about the new year is that you get to take a look back into the year that passed, and as we live life, things happen, and then we kind of like wail, like things happen and they knock us down. But then when you take a moment and take a look back into the full picture, it's you get to see what is what the great things that happen in your life. So it was a rough year, but it was also a really good year that passed. I got my US citizenship, got my MBA, joined Black Rosie Media. Like I said, I've always been a big fan of your work, Erica, and ever since I was in Brazil. So truly, like, being able to, I'm not gonna get emotional, just like being able to co-host a podcast with you is like a bucket list kind of thing for me. So that was a big thing that happened this year. So yeah, I feel like I've taken a look back, got some 2-day rest from work, working a lot, and just writing for Beta Basket and contributing here with Black Rosie Media.
Well, thank you for those kind words. It is amazing that we were able to link up for this project. And again, because of things happening with the Seattle Storm, it meant that we were really diving into nuanced conversation. And I think that's what we really tried to do here. There's still a lot up in the air with the Seattle Storm, and things that we just don't know, that we likely won't know anytime soon, at least. But what we can do is take a look at the previous season and where we think the pieces will fit. And one of those, of course, being Nneka Ogwumike, who we will talk about on today's episode. And I'm with you. I'm terrible actually at reflecting back and taking a moment to, kind of smell the roses, as the phrase goes. And but in putting together our newsletter for this year, I put together just a few things, and I was kind of blown away when looking at all of the growth that we've seen. We've already gotten over 10,000 views for Gotta
Yeah.
Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. And of course, got to see that podcast all the way through to the last game
Yeah.
of the WNBA season, and only our second season as a podcast. So that was huge. Of course,
Mhm.
you and I, we did a soft launch right before the Olympics. And then while I was in Paris, we connected on some international basketball, and then in earnest started with Tempestagi Talk after the All-Star break, and already have surpassed 3,000 views for
It's a
Tempestagi
big
Talk.
deal. Yeah.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And those are just two metrics on YouTube. We've seen growth elsewhere. And the next phase for us is to, as we do our storytelling in podcast form, to translate some more of that more consistently, more regularly into deeper dives that fans can read and hear. So, that is what we are excited to do. And that includes talking about Nneka Ogwumike. Now,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, Nneka Ogwumike continues to be a leader throughout the WNBA and will lead the Players Association through another CBA negotiation with the WNBA. But we want to talk about Nneka Ogwumike coming to this Seattle team, and of course, coming from LA, the team that drafted her. She won championship, an MVP, and I spoke to Nneka a few times, and it definitely was a transition. But let's just first, Roberta, start off with, if you can take yourself back to the last offseason and knowing that Seattle was one of the places that Nneka was thinking about.
Yeah, so we knew that she was between two teams, right? She was between New York and Seattle, and she ended up choosing Seattle. I was a little surprised by that. I confess that I'm a little surprised by that. But all in all, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that her choice made sense for where the Storm is and the role that she could have in this team. I think that she saw the big picture and what she could accomplish, not only in terms of championship, but in terms of building something. And yeah, I think it was a good move. She is the kind of player that the Storm has needed for a long time. She brings that steady presence in the paint and off the court. She is a natural leader. She leads in a very unique Nneka Ogwumike way that is different from anything that I have seen. And this is something that this team has needed for a long time, ever since Sue left. I feel like Sue kind of missed that veteran peer by her side. She brought Tina Charles, right, for the last year. So I feel that Nneka made sense, especially when paired with Skylar.
Yeah, I think the leadership, and we talked about this a little bit with Skylar, but the leadership, I think, is what people were really excited to see how that would play out. And so we're definitely going to get into that. But also, the transition was something that actually Nneka was looking forward to in ways that maybe are not obvious. And that just being that she kind of wanted to be able to step back for a little bit. So when I spoke to her during All-Star weekend, first thing she said is the transition has been really tough. And she told me this hilarious story. We didn't have the audio ready for today. That's on me. But if you're on our Slack channel, I'll make sure to post the raw audio. And then there's just a little bit of editing that I want to do to clean it up before we have it public. But she told me that she had to get used to literally remembering that she's on the Seattle Storm. She said the other day, this is just before All-Star, the Seattle Storm were playing Atlanta, and she, was in the huddle, and she's like, sparks on 3. And then she was like, oh my gosh. And she was so mortified. She said her teammates just kind of laughed it off. But she was grateful that they're giving her grace. She's this person who is expected to be a leader. You're leading the huddle and then you say the wrong team name. And so, for her, that's a huge adjustment. But something that, again, that she talked about, that she just really wanted to be able to sit in playing a different role. And the coaching staff also was something that, and we're going to hear from her in exit interviews, but that was something else that really stood out to her. And again, similarly to what we talked about with Skylar, how much of what she was telling us in exit interviews was maybe in anticipation of some of what we now know was to come, but we can get into that. But let's also talk about Nneka by the numbers, because again, she's been a champion before, an all-star, an MVP. What were her numbers looking like, Roberta, this past season for Seattle?
Yeah, she had some really good numbers. Just keep in mind that this was her 13th year in the WNBA, and she played 31.8 minutes per game. That's a career best since 2015. She was second in points in the Seattle Storm behind Jewel Lloyd. So Nneka had 16.7 points per game. She was also the second leading rebounder right behind Azzy with 7.6 per game. One thing that really stood out to me was her shooting efficiency. She shot 51.1 from the floor per game, and that was the third best on the team, right behind Sadie's and Azzy. Dulcie Fancon-Mengiaru, she is first on the team, but she only played 7 games, so we count like from 10 plus. So then that is Sadie's, Azzy, and then Nneka. Nneka, of course, shot more shots, and she shot 40.5 from the 3-point line, which was the best 3-point average on the team. So she, like I said, a steady presence and just consistent across the board. She has been that way her whole career. When someone asked Noe during a post-game presser about Nneka averaging, still like almost averaging double-double at some point, how do you see that? Noe said, it's impressive that you have a 13 season veteran who is still able to put those numbers. That says a lot about her consistency and her steadiness. She had 11, 20 or more points games, and in those games that she scored 20 or more, the Storm was 7-4. So she was very important for a team that lost so much last year and lacked that stability and consistency. So she fit really well in the rotation.
Yeah, she was the anchor. And I think that stat with when she scores 20 or more, the Storm were 7-4 in those games. That reminds me of the stat that we talk about a lot on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. When Jonquel Jones hits a double-double, more often than not, the New York Liberty were winning games. And so I think that you started to see at points in the season, because Skylar Diggins-Smith, we talked about this a little bit, but her splits, she was struggling a little to find her offensive flow early in the season. And I think for Nneka, like, she had to figure out how to be an anchor pretty early on, because you have Skylar Diggins-Smith just coming back again. She hadn't played in at least one full season. Jewel Lloyd struggling a little bit with her efficiency. You mentioned efficiency numbers for Nneka. And so Nneka had to be that person. And then you have Ezzy, who had a fantastic start. I think a lot of people would say that, but then got injured, of course, was also away for the Olympics. And so that steadiness that steadiness. Yes, absolutely. And since you gave me another chance, I'm going to put in another plug uh for our
Ooh.
podcast. Got to Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, part of Black Rosie Media. Thank you so much for that. But New Yorkers are so insecure. That's so interesting. But now I'm going to give another plug for Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, where if you love the state of New York and the people who come from there, then should probably listen to that one. Anyway, so yeah, I think with Nneka, her stability was so critical, and I think also what was interesting for me is that that became a little bit more of the story. Not that, of course, her efficiency or what she's doing on the court isn't a part of her
Mhm.
kind of her legacy, but I think that there was so much figuring out when it comes to who was leading the team at times, that you kind of were zeroing in on what Nneka was doing on the court, because that seemed to be the constant,
Mhm.
whereas other things were still in flux.
Yeah. Yeah. So excuse me. Yeah, she was trying to it almost sounds like a rebrand after some years on the same team. Again, 13 years in the WNBA, all in the same team. So she wanted to be in a place where she would have a say, and she would be in tune with the coaching staff. So she was just flowers to Noelle Quinn the whole season, and the coaching staff. And
Yep.
she has mentioned time and time again that as a free agent now, one of her priorities is having a coaching staff that she can trust and that's going to listen to her. Yeah, go on.
No, I was just agreeing with you. And as a matter of fact, I think that you kind of set us up for, oops, you set us up for the first clip that we want to play
Yeah.
from Nneka. This is her from exit interviews, and she talks about that. And again, I think it's illuminating to hear some of what she said within the context of now the investigation that has wrapped, no findings of bullying or harassment from the coaching staff. But here's Nneka, and I think it's me asking this first question. Here's Nneka from exit interviews. We caught up at All Star. You were open that there were some things that were difficult to transition from to being with a new organization, whether it was in the huddle or just, the things that are kind of second nature.
Mhm.
Now that you've had a little bit of time to reflect, how would you assess what that transition for you has been like? You alluded to that this was the busiest free agency that you've ever had, but it did result in a relocation. So how would you just assess what this process has been like for you? What were some of the more difficult parts, and what was the most enjoyable part for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming to terms with leaving what felt very much like home was probably the hardest part of the beginning of the transition. I think I mentioned this at All-Star, like deciding that, I was going to leave LA was kind of the biggest part of me making my decision. And then, of course, being more open to what other organizations could offer, and also being a part of franchises that, that want to lead the pack. And I obviously ended up in Seattle, and I'm very grateful that I did. And ultimately, really being in a new place, but then also feeling very represented with the coaching staff. That's something that I have not ever experienced. And they made me a better professional and a better player for it, especially being coached by a Black woman who played in this league, who is being positioned by mostly women owners. I think that that's something that spoke to my ethos. And I think it also speaks to the progress that I hope to see in myself, and also as a part of an organization. Um, I would say that like the challenges perhaps were, you know, no longer necessary, like being the new kid on the block, I guess you could say. Not that it was necessarily challenging, but it was a different space that I hadn't occupied in so long. And so kind of navigating being like the new kid, and leaning into the vulnerabilities that offers, or I guess that welcomes, and knowing when to not do too much, knowing when to, step in and insert myself, because I think in my career I've evolved into the player that is very, I guess, kind of like matronly, and is someone um who tries to lead by example, get ahead of things, ensure that the chemistry in the locker room is where it needs to be. And navigating that, to me, I think was probably the most challenging part of my experience. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was, again, really interesting within the context of what we now know and the whole investigation. So, in addition to some of what we talked about before, and probably there just not being a very clear-cut transition when it comes to whether you want to say ownership, front office, or even the coaching staff, was telling players with regard to leadership and what Jewel Lloyd in particular, what her role would be. You also have Nneka Ogwumike in that clip saying that she was intentional about trying to, as you just said, and then we heard from her as well, take a different approach to her leadership. I mean, what did you see as the impact of maybe some of that double dutching coming from Nneka in particular, whereas we talked about that a little bit with Skylar as well?
I think it's part of what draws most of us WNBA fans to Nneka, which is that intentionality and knowing exactly where she's headed. So when she made that transition to the Storm, she talked to us later during press conferences that she wanted people to remember that she's an elite basketball player, not only representative, not only that off the court powerhouse that we know. I do agree that in the past years, also because the Sparks did not do so well, has not been doing so well lately. In the past years, people have forgotten that Nneka is an MVP, that Nneka is an all WNBA. She's an all-star, like she's multiple time all-star, NBA WNBA champion. She won a championship with Candace Parker. So people remember Candace Parker, of course, because she's the great player that she is, but she also won a championship in 2021. The last championship that Nneka won was 2016. So she wanted to bring that back. She wanted people to remember that she's a basketball player first. She's a human first, of course, but she is an amazing women's basketball player. And I feel that that is strategy of not taking the role of leader, of being more quiet, just leading by example. In that case, we have Skylar, who has a more spoken out type of leader, and we have Nneka, who took a role of being a more lead by example and sit back, watch, and stepping when things need to be, taken care of, which she did. When you look at her splits this year and the games where she was key, like her 26-point game was against Minnesota in July, and Minnesota, we all know that you needed to be consistent to beat Minnesota. I mean,
Well,
Erica, you know that more than anyone.
yeah, right. And I was gonna say, I mean, Nneka knows that because when
Exactly.
the
The 2016 championship.
right, the LA Sparks and the Minnesota Lynx were going back and forth. And so, yeah, Nneka, I think, really did want her game to speak for itself.
Yeah.
And I get the sense, now thinking of it in hindsight, that some of that maybe had to do with, and obviously she stayed after Derek Fisher left, but there was that very controversial, very awkward playoff where the Sparks benched Parker and
Yeah.
So that was just strange. You know,
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to see Aloysius' comments. I think she would have went to the Liberty had she not won a championship. I think that, yeah, had she not won a championship, I think is what you're saying here. You know, I honestly think that there wasn't room for Nneka on the Liberty
I
squad.
agree. I agree
Um,
with you.
and so I think that it's a feeler of feeling it out. If you're the Liberty, you don't say no to a meeting with Nneka Ogwumike. Also, as we'll talk about later on the show, Nneka Ogwumike, an unrestricted free agent. Again, is she going to go the Stewie route and just be an unrestricted free agent until at minimum we get a new CBA? I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm here for it for both of them, for Stewie and for Nneka. Like, absolutely. Why now? Now, does that mean that they're going to change teams? I think one might be more likely than the other between you and I, but I don't think either one is probable. Interesting that we have a Nneka anger translator. I don't think that Nneka would say that Skylar Diggins-Smith is a poison. I really don't. That's my read on it. Now, they might not have always seen eye to eye. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just saying nobody always sees eye to eye. And I don't get the sense that that's what Nneka was saying in those comments at all. I don't think she was really referring to I think Skylar's comments, and even with Skylar's comments, I think she was very much so focused on herself. I think we talked about this on the last episode. Skylar's just a little bit more controversial for a lot of people. I think for Nneka, what we heard her say multiple times is that she's leaning into the coaching staff, the representation of the coaching staff, and that's important to her. So now whether or not that was her way of expressing herself within the context of what then came with the investigation, I guess we won't really know. But I don't really hear much of her saying anything about not just Skylar, really anyone in those comments. But she definitely held it down for the coaching staff in her comments.
Yeah, she did. So there's one thing when I said in the beginning that I was a little surprised that Nneka ended up going with the Storm.
Sorry, I just saw this comment. That is an understatement.
Exactly.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I just saw that.
No, that's
Eric Fisher made a bunch of weird decisions. Yeah, he did. Anyway,
that's an important thing to say. So when I say that I was surprised that Nneka chose the Storm over the Liberty, when I watched that Shattered Glass documentary, she speaks very openly about what she wants for her future. And there's one sentence that she says, one quote, that is, "I have more years behind me than ahead of me, and I want to win a championship." So I was like, if the choice is up to her, I think she's gonna go with the Liberty because the Liberty is set for a championship this year. But with your comment, Erica, about, the Liberty is definitely going to give Nneka a meeting. We don't know what came out from that. We don't know if what the Liberty offered her in terms of what she would be on the court. Perhaps she wouldn't be playing as much, and a player like Nneka, you need to average those 31.8 minutes per game. So in that sense, in hindsight, it does make sense that she chose the Storm over the Liberty.
Yeah, because then New York would have had to make some tough decisions. And Brian and I are talking about this a lot on Here You Go, Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, hosted by yours truly. We've been talking about there's also future proofing. Yeah. You don't future proof knowing that you have to get through three expansion drafts in the next 2-3 seasons, and then 4 in the next 5-6 seasons. Nneka doesn't help the New York Liberty future proof, in my opinion. Yeah. She does.
That makes sense.
Because who are you going to have to give up for Nneka to get those minutes that you were talking about, right? Leo's got to be on the table. Niara maybe. Obanajolani Hamilton. Do you even keep Kayla Thornton if for this past season, if you're getting Nneka Ogwumike? You see, and those are just Anyway, it's an interesting thing because Nneka does have high value, and the league
Yeah,
have had to make some decisions. That doesn't mean though that as the world turns, as the
yeah.
WNBA world turns, that they might not re-up that, because we've seen that, you have a conversation one year and then 3 years later you're in Vegas or something.
Exactly. Exactly. Who knows? And with the new CBA, like, and honestly, I'm glad that we're taking an approach of talking about Nneka's by the number first, because she did make an impression, and she accomplished what she wanted, of reminding people who she is as a basketball player. She's really I it's very important to talk about her role outside of the team, but I'm very happy that we're bringing her by the numbers, because she was amazing this year.
I think it's hilarious that the comments have leaned into food. First of all, the best Mexican food I've ever I had in Chicago. So
Oh.
sorry, LA Echo Park. I'm going to Chicago.
Oh,
Second
if
best is
if if
obviously New York. But I don't eat poutine. Toronto can keep poutine. Thank you very much. Nothing
yeah,
comes from
if
poutine.
you allow me to make another comment, Nneka, she's also Chef Neck.
I know,
She
yes.
loves cooking, and I
It
watch her recipes on Instagram. It's amazing. Nneka, invite me for dinner someday, please.
Yeah, she will definitely not have poutine on the list. It doesn't seem like it's gonna fit her
Yeah.
clean kind of
Yep.
eating. But okay, let's get back to Nneka, because I think that the Seattle Storm getting used to Nneka being a go-to option was something that, let's talk about it. Did it come as quickly as it should have? Was there a waiting out period? What are your thoughts there?
I think there was a waiting out period. I think that there was an honest attempt of keeping Jewel as the go-to and maintaining her as the person you're going to draw plays to. And I mean, why wouldn't you, right? She led the WNBA in points last year. She beat the scoring point. But this was a different year for Jewel, and that happens. Players have off years. So what we see is that Nneka, and we're going to take a look into her usage. She started the year being with an usage rate of 19.4. She finished the year with her last in September. Her usage rate was of 21.5, and she peaked at 22.9. So there was a lot of growth. Jewel Lloyd started the year with a usage of, the first month she had usage of 28.5. And in September, her usage had dropped to the lowest in the year, which was 26.0. She did peak at 29.8. But we see that progressively the Storm tactic changed a lot, and it focused a lot on Skylar and Nneka, because Skylar also saw her usage rate grow. So we see that Nneka did end up becoming someone who would finish the plays more often, and it makes sense. She was one of the most consistent. Someone asked if, so they were like, Mercedes Russell was more efficient than Nneka. Well, Mercedes also shot almost 500 less field goals than Nneka, so that makes a difference. Nneka shot 600. sorry. I mean, not 500, 300. Nneka shot, she attempted 493 field goals. Sadie's attempted 120. So, and still the difference in the field goal percentage was very minimal. Anyway, so the Storm needed that consistency. This is a league that needs consistency, and I know some people didn't like it, but what Skylar Diggins-Smith said is true. If you don't come ready to play, you're not going to win. The league is growing. There are more teams. There are going to be more elite players. You need to be consistent. Without consistency, you will not excel in the WNBA.
Yep, your goose is cooked. Actually, I take it back. Speaking of tacos, the best tacos I ever had were probably in Phoenix. And I cannot remember the restaurant, but them things. And then they had the salsa bar.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, very good. I got to remember the place. Because the place over by All-Star, they had a few taco places there and they were not.
Makes sense. Big Hispanic population.
Yeah, indeed. Anyway, but I think the Seattle Storm, again, we talked about this so many times. Coming out of the gate, they had like a little bit of expectation of super team, but not really. And they got to do some figuring out. And Nneka, in the conversation that I had with her at All-Star, she talked about how teams that have players, obviously that are not performing in the Olympics, the players that are not performing in the Olympics, they try to get together as much as possible, not just to watch the games. And she talked about the Seattle Storm facilities, but also, she said sometimes people call it a quote unquote second training camp. She's like, we're not doing that in Seattle. She's like, I'm grateful that's not the language that we're using, but she's anti calling it a second training camp, but it is an opportunity just to work on things. And so that was something that Nneka really, really talked about. And again, it was just so wild to see the team kind of have more frustration after the All-Star break than to really ride the trajectory that they had. Because I think they had a nice uptick right before All-Star. And, I will say, because I don't think it's fair to conflate things without knowing for sure. But I think we can say for sure, Noelle Quinn in Canada did not have the Olympics that they wanted. So there was frustration coming from there. I think we can say that Jewel Lloyd had a puzzling, and I do think Cheryl Reeve is a good head coach. A lot of people, like I was on a podcast and they ranked her really low for her performance.
Oh my God.
Olympics. I don't think that it was her best showing as a head coach. But I also, this is how I felt about Sandy Brondello last year. Did Sandy make all of the right choices? No, but she stuck to her choices and she wrote it out. And that was a whole WNBA season. Now you're talking about effectively 7 games, including the gold medal game. And Cheryl Reeve made some tough choices, including, and I think it was me that asked. She said, we can't win a gold medal without Jewel Lloyd, and then proceeded to not play Jewel Lloyd in the gold medal game. So I think there was a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration. Certainly people in women's basketball media, right? Myself included, getting back from Paris, even in Paris, like, what's going on here? And I do wonder, I don't know, I'm not saying this, it is a question that I'm asking openly, how much of, everything from Canada not doing what they wanted to do, the United States, but specifically Jewel Lloyd being probably frustrated about her Olympics. But then also you had Sammy Whitcomb, who had to be a glue player for Australia. Ezzy put up big minutes for Australia. And really, I think we found some of her grit in the Olympic Games.
Yeah, we did.
And there were it was just like all of these different highs and lows, ups and downs. And now you have, a short runway to let that go and focus on trying to get to the playoffs. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And I feel that now, because we know everything that was going on, without that, the team not being cohesive out of the court, the team was definitely not on the same page.
No.
The team not being on the same page and going through all of those changes is a recipe for disaster. And that's what happened if they were on the same page, because when you look at the New York Liberty, they also had several players in the Olympics. They had Sandy Brondello coaching Australia. You see Minnesota also. I think that what missed the issue with the Storm was the lack of cohesiveness of the court.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think it's particularly anyone's fault. It is a season of finding your identity, and
Yeah.
as they were finding that identity, there was the huge break, the 1 month off.
Yes.
That very high, there was so much effort, there was change of countries, change
Yeah.
of time zones, and then you don't know what's gonna glue, so
You know this because we tried to coordinate a live, and it almost took all of the energy that I had left just to figure things out. But I was exhausted there, and then it was hot. It was
Yeah.
so hot. I don't think that the Team USA folks in particular had to worry about public transportation like I did. It was hot. It was funky. I'll just say it was a little funky. But jokes aside, it was a grueling schedule. So
Yeah.
all of the team was in Phoenix. And then from Phoenix, they went to London. And I know because I did the same thing. I actually went to New York and then I went to London. And then from London to Paris. And if I remember correctly, the New York, see, now you got me. The USA team, they had their main headquarters in Paris. So there was a lot of shuffling. Like the first part of the tournament was in Lille, which was, I think, using the express train was a solid 2 hours away. And then one day there was really bad traffic and it just got really crazy. So they were coming to Paris to practice and back to Lille. It was just a lot. There was a lot going on. And I talked to Asia Wilson about this because I was like, Asia's game, there was a time where it was kind of head to head with Stewie, and then Asia just took off. Yeah. And oh man, I'm going to forget the phrase that she used, but she basically, said that for her, she's really leaning into the nonstop schedule. And for her, that was a way to really test how fit she was, to test her mettle. And, I think you had some players, Stewie took a break, right before All-Star. A few other players sat out, like Fee, for example, nursing an injury. And then you had some players that were just go, go, go. But it's hard when you're in a stride like Nneka was, and there's no Olympics. So, and the question about, if they have, I don't know if it's college guys, I can't speak to how old they are, but they have a practice squad that they roll.
I can talk on that if you want. Yeah, they're
get into it, but they have a guys squad that they practice.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So I mean, you have that as something that you can bake in, but it's, I mean, they do that for physicality, for speed sometimes, but it's not the same as playing against WNBA players, and so you can try to simulate things as much as possible, but it's a long break. I mean, I'm covering hockey right now. They had a 4-day break, and they're like, yeah, we knew we were going to be on the struggle bus. That was after 4 days. They had almost 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Almost 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Without
a long break.
WNBA tempo. It's really wild.
And it's not any tempo. It's you said WNBA tempo. The league has gotten so physical.
Is that what I said? I don't remember saying anything of this. Of that sort.
It's like the WNBA has become just so explosive. I think we said the other way around.
Like, this is so wild. This anti-New York in the comments was not what I was expecting at all. Like, I
But
don't
here's the
I
thing.
don't even live in New York right now, but go on, fam. Sure. Go on.
Yeah, so I think that all of that did not help. So what you mentioned about Asia, it does tell about how the mentality plays a role. Like it seems like she put that as a goal to exceed
Definitely.
regardless of the circumstances.
Oh, for
Not
sure.
exceed, not exceed, excel, surpass any expectations and
Yes.
any other level. It seems like she set herself up for that and she was ready for all of those tribulations, even everything that went on with the aces. She remained, people could have stumbled, Asia could have using that as an excuse to like slow
But
her
she
game
didn't.
down, but
If
she
anything,
didn't.
it fueled her.
Yeah.
And I mean, the aces ran out of gas. I don't
Yeah.
think
Asia
Asia ran
didn't.
out of gas. Aces
Mhm.
did, but I don't think Asia
Yep.
did. Someone
Asia didn't.
earlier said, Chelsea Gray, she couldn't run. Listen, as someone who I'm starting to think maybe that they misdiagnosed my my hyperextended heavy sprain. I think it might have actually fractured. Anyway, the point being, as someone who now has a foot injury that might be a break,
Ooh, that's true.
recovering the PT, like getting your mobility back, is tough.
Oh
It
God.
is tough. And Chelsea Gray wasn't there. Now, okay, I don't know if we want to go here. I'll just say it like this. I don't have an issue with Chelsea Gray being on the roster. I do have an issue with how many minutes she got early.
Mhm.
That was what was troubling for me. I think Fee was deployed a little awkwardly also at
Yeah.
times. And Sab as well. They went to Sab and Ka late.
Mhm.
And that's how, USA basketball
Yeah.
gets through it. But anyway, yeah. So I think with Nneka, let's just get into it. We talked
Yeah.
about it. She is one of a few very high profile unrestricted free agents. You were mentioning right before we came on, and I completely forgot that we played this clip. We played it on the last episode, but Sue Bird breaking down, why she thought it was kind of smart, how the Seattle Storm did what they did. I mean, it's definitely a take. I don't know if I 100% am leaning into what she's saying, but it definitely brought a different perspective. But one of the things, right, that she said is that they couldn't core no one, right?
Yeah.
Core Nneka, including of
Yeah.
course the Storm, which means she will
Yeah.
be an unrestricted free agent. I mean, we're pretty sure that even if even if Nneka could be cored, she was protected by Seattle.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
we can all agree on that. So she
Mhm.
wasn't going to be available to go to Golden State.
Yeah.
But is there a world in which Nneka does not return to Seattle?
There is a world, yes. But I think that she's coming back. I think that there is like she's also like a very cerebral player, and she knows that if a coaching staff is able to stay together and set up a core that and build around that core, she knows that that is long-term success. And I
Yeah.
believe that she wants to play a role on that, and she sees that the facility and the relationship with the coaches, that's going to make her job as a leader on the team easier. And I think that
because then we found out what happened.
yeah. So we don't know that the Storm is gonna trade Jewel. She did ask, and I did have someone say that they're gonna do everything they can to oblige. But it's not only up to the Storm. When you look when you look at the unrestricted free agent list, uh, who is the Storm gonna bring to replace Nneka? To replace her, Brittany Griner's not gonna go anywhere. Brittany Griner's gonna
Yeah,
stay with
Griner,
Phoenix.
Louise, an unrestricted free agent. Kelsey
Tina
Plum.
Charles
Yeah, Tina
is.
Charles.
So I think that I don't see a lot of like big changes in the offseason this year when it comes like to the main players. I think that most of them are going to oh, my camera is gone again. I feel like most of them are going to stay where they have been for a while.
Yeah.
Let me fix this camera problem.
Well,
Sorry.
while you're doing that, actually, let's go to Nneka talking a little bit about that, because she was asked about unrestricted free agency and what her plans are. Craig saying Natasha Howard might be a great pickup. We're going to get to that after we hear this clip from Nneka Ogwumike.
I mean, I wouldn't frame it that way. I think that
Sorry, I cut off the response, but the question was, does she feel like she kind of has the ability to go in and kind of make demands? So, and then she said, I wouldn't frame it that way. So here's Nneka.
after a season, there's feedback, of course, and it's important to be introspective and reflective of that over the course of the season, and then ultimately at the end, when the intention is for the organization to be better. And even coming into such a fantastic franchise like Seattle, I think that what really drew me here was the want to uphold integrity and to sustain success in a way that puts us in front. And so I'm someone who has always been a solution-oriented person, solution-based, and I love being collaborative and innovative in ways to figure out how, me, a team, a group, an organization that I'm a part of can be in front. And I think that requires diversity of thought. I think that requires effective, constructive criticism. I think that requires levels of individual and collective accountability, and I'm not afraid to talk about those things.
Thank you.
So that is also the energy that Noelle Quinn was giving at the end of her exit interview availability with us. We talked in detail about what Skylar said. So, as far as the accountability piece and not being afraid to have some of those difficult conversations. So, I get the sense that from that clip, even if she felt that it was, stormy weather, so to speak, and that I think that there's, maybe enough good for her to really be able to move on. Now, if winning a championship is something that Nneka is really focused on, then I guess the question becomes, if she stays in Seattle, is that still her best opportunity, her personal best opportunity at a ring? And remember, that goes not just to her capabilities, because we talked about that, right, with her numbers this year, but is the team going to be able to compete with Vegas is going to have to do some interesting stuff, but there's still a team you have to worry about. Dallas is an interesting team. They have a lot that they have to figure out. Obviously, New York is up there. What is Minnesota going to do? I don't think they really have to move too many things right now. So is this a Seattle Storm team? Let's just assume that Jewel is able to get traded, that get Nneka to a better place to compete for a championship by next season, by this summer.
Yeah, so when you take a look into the WNBA salary cap, shout out her hoop stats, for 2025, they have 712,000 of cap room. Let's say they trade Jewel, that's almost 350 that opens up. That would give them the opportunity to bring back Gabby Williams and potentially a Kelsey Plum. So as Jewel Lloyd had a huge role in assembling the 2024 WNBA Seattle Storm team, we should assume that if the Storm is going to really lean into this identity of Nneka and Skylar, they are going to rely on them to make decisions. And I think that they're going to make big requests and they're going to go out and try to recruit players. I gotta say I like that trade money. Kelsey Plum to Seattle, Jewel to Vegas. I think that Jewel would do well in Vegas. She's also very close to Asia, so maybe that's what she needs. Maybe she needs that support. Just how you worked for her, the Storm, while she had Stewie and Sue. So maybe
Okay.
in Asia.
Okay. I think it's good for Seattle.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I'm just like how do I want to frame this? If we believe that Skylar Diggins was the quote unquote problem, right? Because there are people who believe that.
Yeah.
I think we've got maybe a few in the chat. I'm just going based on
Yeah.
what you type, right? If she's the poison, right? Because of that, her style is different from anything that we have seen in Seattle, maybe ever. I think you can make some arguments over some other players, but they happen to be white. Anyway, if that was the issue and potentially for Jewel Lloyd, how in the world is she going to fit into that kind of personality in Vegas? Like, some of what is alleged in Seattle is like light work for Vegas, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way, but I'm just like,
no, I think you're right.
If that was the issue, if it was, and I don't know that it was or not, some people seem to think that that was a part of the issue. So I don't understand how that's gonna be all ace boon kun kumbaya. Does she get along with Asia? Does she get along with? I mean, she's played on the national team with a lot of those players, sure. And that's just a more excitable franchise than anything that Seattle has ever been. So again, that was a little bit of the issue, and maybe it wasn't, but some people think it is. I don't know. That for me, I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I think I think that it, like I said, what you said about the Skylar leadership style being something completely new in Seattle, it is, and like I said, it has a lot to do with the local culture, right? Seattle is a place where it's the passive aggressiveness that takes you to places.
This is coming up, actually. It's
I think it's the 10th.
Unrivaled, or right before. Is it the 10th, or?
I think it's January 10th. I know that it's impossible to get tickets.
It's definitely January. It's definitely in January. And I remember thinking, I think I'm going to be at Unrivaled during that. Well, anyway, I'll just be leaving Seattle.
It would be really cool. So I think that the Storm fan base would love that. And if you can get, Skylar said that she was already recruiting Nneka. So if they are able to, if Skylar is able to recruit Nneka, and let's say Jewel gets the trade that she wants, if you get a Storm team that is Sky, Nneka, Kelsey Plum, Ezzy, and Gabby Williams, that's a heck of a team.
So basically, you get one UW alum for another, right?
Bye, Sammy, and hello, Kelsey.
Yeah. I mean, I also think we haven't gotten to our Sammy Whitcomb episode yet, but I think the writing was on the wall. But the way that Sammy phrased it is, she wants to actively explore free agency. Like she made that evidently clear right out the gate that that's something that she wants to do. I think I think real world, first of all, real world WNBA, like if we had the original real world formula, Like the original, not like the challenge stuff. I do watch the challenge more for the nostalgia than the actual television. But if we had like the old school real world format and it was Skylar Diggins Smith, Mabry,
I would pay any money to watch it.
Dejanay,
Any money.
oh my, and Cunningham. Oh my gosh. Not throwing in Cunningham in there. Like that would be
That's where it becomes bad.
I would absolutely watch that. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that I would watch it, but I would.
I love some bad reality TV. That's what makes it good. I love it.
Okay, so Moni, this is what I was thinking. I mean, Asia obviously puts in overtime for that Aces organization, culture-wise, on the court, off the court, all of the things. It's almost like she's marketable. What? Anyway, it is the 17th. Okay, I thought so, right? I'm assuming that's what you mean for Kelsey Plum. Is that the Kelsey Plum date? Because I was like, isn't that an unrivaled date? I remember that. Okay. Anyway, I think you're right. Asia could smooth a lot of that over.
I agree. I think so.
So, and then Jackie Young has a friend.
Oh my god!
Jackie will be like, "Listen, y'all gonna leave me alone."
Oh, Jackie
and Jewel just stay in the quiet corner laughing at everybody.
Oh my god, that would be hilarious. I gotta say, I do think that Asia is someone who is. Jewel has the softest of the spots for Asia, and I do think that. So something that we talk about that here before. Jewel is a very like her people are her people, and her people make the place for her. So Stewie is her person. Asia is her person. So if she is with Asia, I think she's gonna do really well. I do think that that's something like for some people are really like they're not well-being, but they if they have someone who they trust and who they are very fond of, that's going to make the experience much better. And I think that that's what Jewel didn't have here. Her people were gone, and she became the center of the team, and then she wasn't anymore. I think that Jewel working with Asia would be really good, and hopefully somehow they can have like a rendition of that amazing meme.
This is interesting. Jewel to Phoenix for Beck Allen and Natasha Mack. First of all, I just want good things for Rebecca Allen, and I do call her Rebecca Allen because I covered her way back before she was Beck to everyone. Before one of the, before she learned how to play defense and, became, but I just want good things for her. I don't know. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah. So for Beck Allen and Natasha Mack. So then you have Jewel going to Phoenix. That's interesting. Resign, and resign. Anyway, those two get confusing. Resign Gabby.
Yeah.
I hope Johannes gets released up as a Jewel replacement. Yeah, hard quotes on that. I think she brings more excitement in some ways because Jewel is an extremely exciting player when she's in the zone. Maureen Johannes is she's the magician.
I would love Maureen Johannes here.
Oh,
I know.
I don't know. I mean, I think there is a world in which New York is going to have to make a decision about Maureen Johannes.
Her Leo.
I don't know.
European by European. So.
But then you wouldn't need to sign a huge contract like Plum, and you would help the bench. And I think that's a critical part here. That last piece. I do think that depth has to be a focus for Seattle moving forward.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they really have that.
No,
Phoenix already has Cloud and DT in the backcourt. How does Jewel find a place? Yeah, that's true.
That's fair. Yeah.
Didn't get rid of any of them in that trade option. And So
Hmm.
who sits, right? I think
Exactly. I don't think
unless
Jewel is a player who sits. So
unless it's USA basketball, apparently. But I mean, unless you're assuming that DT isn't there, but even still, Cloud and Lloyd, that's a lot. That's a lot.
yeah, it is. It is.
That is definitely a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Um,
I gotta say, I see the Vegas thing happening, but let's
Interesting.
see.
I don't see that much trade value coming back for 1 year of the jewel we all just saw. That's fair too.
That's a very fair point,
And
and I
I think
think that if you're going to take into consideration, like if you're going to, because when you learn about like data analytics, you take into consideration progression and what if you're like predicting the future. Jules' progression is not, it's more looking like a regression, and that's talking data analytics terms, not making like judge of character. Okay. I think that she really doesn't have this trade value that she would have during this past off season.
okay.
Here he comes.
Well, because okay. First of all, I mean, it was right there, so I had to take that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was right there, so I had to take it. Regarding the trade value, and I feel like we alluded to this, but again, Jewel not finding a space with USA basketball, literally all jokes aside, whether you agreed with it or not, it now you're thinking, okay, Cheryl Reeve, revered as one of the top coaches in the game. So what's going on there? What are we maybe not seeing? Maybe you
Mhm.
do a little bit of extra recon just to kind of figure that out. Then now you have and these allegations that did lead to a third party investigation, and now we have we have no wrongdoing found. We really don't have
Yeah.
much of a report that has been publicized. But so now I do wonder. I don't think I'm not going to make a judgment on whether it's right or wrong, but I do think there is a world in which there are certain teams that might look at USAB, what happened with Seattle, and then look at the numbers that Jewel was putting up. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, but what are we getting? Like, I think there's just a little
Yeah.
bit more that you have to figure out, especially coming off of the year that she had. So
Yeah.
I guess this is my way of saying, and I don't know what the answer is, and I honestly don't know that this should be a factor, but I
Hmm.
think it's a worthwhile question to ask. Does what happened in Seattle help or hurt Jewel Lloyd
Yeah.
after the season she had on the court?
Yeah, and I want you, Ghost of Gerulatis, the question is why we assuming Jules 2025 season will be like her 2024. Like I said, we're talking about data analytics and progression is regression, right? So 2020 she peaked at 44.3 field goal percentage. Ever since, she has dropped slightly year by year, not necessarily slightly. So 44.3 in 2020, 42.0 in 21, 39.6 in 20. Wait, I'm doing something wrong here. No, it's right. 42.0 in 21, 39.6 in 22, 37.0 in 23, and then 36.0 in 2024. So her numbers have been dropping. And this is not like, it's not a personal attack at Jewel or anything. That's analyzing numbers.
Just noticing them. Yeah, noticing the
I
trend.
think that Jewel has brought so much to the Storm, but maybe she needs to make a change the same way that Nneka did. You know, maybe she needs to take that leap. And when you look at her 3 point uh, Ge- Geralitis, thank you. When you look at her 3 point percentage, 2020 39.0, 21 37.6, 22 38.5, and then it drops abruptly 2023 35.6, and then 27.4. So here's the thing, for a player of Jules caliber, something is going on. and that's not coming from a place of judgment. That's something from like she has the capacity, to put up big numbers. But
Yeah.
when you look at her trajectory recently, the numbers don't show a progression. They show a regression. And again, with the WNBA growing the level it is, there is no room for regression in this league. And it's I think that at fault I tend to want to say good things about every player. So I feel bad saying that about Jewel, but teams are not going to make a decision based on how they feel about a player. And if they want to win championships, they are going to look into their progression.
Right. I think, and I think it's worth some of bringing up some of what we have here. And again, I'm covering the NHL right now. We have these conversations all the time. Like the New York Rangers let Capo Caco go out the door to Seattle, actually. And Seattle now has a young guy who in his last 5 games has as many points as he did when he was on the Rangers in his last 13 games. And that's a small sample size, but in one season. Yeah. So I think it's worth asking the question, and I think it's situational, right? Some teams don't need to, or maybe feel they don't need to, if it's not clear cut, whether they're looking at the numbers and, as you mentioned, a trend of regression, small and slight as it may be, but still something to keep an eye on. They look at some of the question marks that have come out of the Olympics, or even, whatever was going on in Seattle. Some teams, seeing all of that together, they might not make a decision if, to pursue that, even though they know it's Jewell Loyd. And when Jewell Loyd can hit that corner shot and keep her heel in play, that's someone you want on your team.
Exactly. But yeah,
they just don't want to get into that, whether it's for a lot of different reasons. I think other teams, other coaches, maybe they sit down and they have a conversation. I think Jewell Loyd is worth having a conversation with, regardless of how your organization is thinking. Oh, this doesn't impact us at all. All of the extra stuff going on in Seattle, whatever went on in USA, we're not phased, but let's talk about your numbers. Because in her exit interview, Jewell herself said, for the first time in my career, I did not meet my internal benchmarks. So that's, regardless of how you feel about anything else, that's what Jewell is saying. That's what she said. So I think that there are some teams that are going to want to sit down and have a conversation with Jewell about that. What's going on? What was the impact? What are some of the things that you've committed to in the off season? And what do you need? Right?
Exactly. That's the question.
What do you want? What do you need to see? What is going to help you get to a place where you feel you're in the best position to meet your goals and beyond? And goals and beyond. So Jewell Loyd is absolutely worth a conversation. I'm not saying she's damaged goods in any way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
To what extent the conversation goes, though, I think changes depending on the team and the organization. Some teams, they don't need a shooting guard and someone who in a pinch can play point, like the New York Liberty. Don't need it. I listen. Even if, again, I don't think the New York Liberty are interested in Jewell Loyd because of the position that she plays, the position that they're in, the Cavs situation that they're in, all of these things. They still have Sabrina Ionescu. And even if we know 100% that Courtney Vandersloot is not coming back, Jewell Loyd does not occupy the space of Courtney Vandersloot.
No. Very different roles.
Sabrina Ionescu, for that matter.
No, very different roles. And when you look at Sabrina today, because when you're assembling a team for 2025 and you want to, go for a championship, you're going to evaluate a player by their today, and what they might look like in the next year. You are not going to necessarily look how they did if they are not, on a progression. So when you look at Sabrina and Jewel, I don't think it will be a fair trade because at this point, when it comes to Jewel, we're talking about potential, right? She has the potential to turn things around and put up the big numbers that she put in 2023 and even improve her efficiency. So what team is willing it has the ability to do that now, and
Right.
that and this thing that Craig said is true, like as a fan, it's sad to think that a player, because Jewel is a loved player in Seattle, like people embrace Jewel and that's her home, uh but the nature of sports, unfortunately, it has been things have been changing so fast, especially in women's sports.
Yeah.
It's more likely that players are going to be going from team to team. It's rare now to find players whose whole career were with only one team, like Diana Taurasi.
This is hilarious. And also, I'm not from Brooklyn. So you can say what you want about Brooklyn. I don't hold Brooklyn down for nobody. But anyway. I still wish they would work it out and stay together. I mean,
Yeah.
I just don't get the sense that that is something. I'm going to be honest. I don't know this, but I'm going to give my opinion here. Everything that I'm hearing, it just doesn't seem like Jewel Lloyd wants to stay in Seattle.
No. And like I said, I have a source who told me that they're going to do everything they can to oblige.
I mean, and so what if they don't get a trade or the trade value isn't what they want? Seattle doesn't have to make that trade, but what happens if Jewel Lloyd doesn't get traded? Does she want out of Seattle enough to sit the season out?
That's a fair point. Would she pull Silva Fowles?
I was thinking Sylvia Fowles, the most recent example
Yep.
is Elena Deladon.
Mm-hmm.
That
Interesting.
is
Both
on the table. That's on the
Yeah.
table right now.
Yeah.
But this is interesting. I don't know that I agree. Bringing Gabby in the second half of the season showed a lack of faith in Lloyd because again, they're not like for like. Gabby is such a
No.
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
She can do a lot of really great things. I think if I were a WNBA coach GM, and clearly I'm not, I would want Gabby to play
Yeah.
as close of the role that she played for France for my team. That's the
I agree.
best I've seen Gabby Williams play basketball.
Yeah.
Personally. That I've witnessed with my own eyes. That was some beautiful, passionate, confident basketball that she played for France.
France national team, Gabby Williams is a different Gabby Williams. And to add to that, bringing Gabby Williams was not about Jewel. Bringing Gabby Williams was about what Gabby Williams brings. I don't think there's any team in the WNBA that would not bring Gabby Williams. She's one of those players that's very high value, kind of flies under the radar because she does take her time to come back to the WNBA. So that when I say flies under the radar, if people don't see you, she's a fan favorite, but I think there's no team in the WNBA that would not want to have Gabby Williams, and I think that Seattle is very lucky that Gabby Williams really likes Seattle. And I know it's not personal. Those are Jerry ladies.
I mean, when people bring up championships, it's definitely a way to stop a conversation, but also we have to think about the context with which you're bringing it, because we also know, and we've talked about this on the show, that Gabby Williams talks a lot about prioritization and how her WNBA career has been impacted by prioritization. So to talk about Gabby Williams and championships, especially when she felt some kind of way about being in Chicago, I don't think that's not like a in good faith argument to have about Gabby Williams as a change maker. She is a change maker.
She is. I will never forget that interception. That she just like stretched her whole body. That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever watched.
I mean, she's a dynamic player. She really is.
Yeah. Yes.
The disrespect on Jewel is crazy. I honestly don't think that there's a lot
It's
of
not
disrespect
disrespect.
for Jewel Lloyd. I haven't read all of the comments, so if you're talking about in the comments, I don't know. But I don't think it's a matter of disrespecting Jewel Lloyd. I think, and actually Aloysius, I think, wrote it, and I don't know. I'm assuming this was in relation to what we were saying about Jewel Lloyd, but I mean, I just think the writing is on the wall. I think it's an unfortunate situation. I do wonder if we had to get to this place.
Yeah.
It just seemed to me to come out of nowhere in some respects. In some respects, it just seemed like things escalated a lot quicker, even if there were
Yeah.
hangups, because obviously this was a frustrated team. Like, you don't show up, you're gonna get beat. Scarlett
Yeah.
Smith said it, Sammy Whitcomb said it, Noelle Quinn said it, Nneka in her way corroborated what they were saying. You don't show up,
Yeah.
you're not gonna win.
No, you're not. And you need defense. Jewel's not the best in defense.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started. The transition, if we really want to break it down, Seattle's transition game at times did them in.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
It really,
And yeah, and there's a difference in I think that this is something that the women's basketball, community is starting to learn. Reading stats and acknowledging that a player is not doing so well. It's not disrespect. It's different. I feel like for a long time, I feel like being soft on players is disrespectful to them, and so that's exactly that's exactly what Craig said.
about
It's being realistic and just reading the numbers, and we're saying that Jewel can go back to she can put up numbers, but right now and what the numbers are saying is that she is her numbers are getting lower and lower. So
and I mean, it's not about riding off into the sunset. I don't think that at all. It's just, it has to get figured out. For me, it's just wild that things have escalated to the point where Jewel Lloyd doesn't want to or doesn't feel that she can reconcile with Seattle. To me, that's where this story and this, I don't want to say story, I want to use my words more intentionally, so I'd rather say this situation. I think that's the most puzzling part of this situation for me, is just that it seems to have escalated so quickly, so rapidly. And but again, I think that I can only speak for me. Once I made up my mind, it's made up. And so I don't know if that's one person in this again situation. Is it multiple people in this situation? Is it everybody in this situation? But the only thing that I can think is that minds have been made up. And you know what? Sometimes you got to know when to hold them, when to fold them. And that's okay too. I mean, I'm a fighter at heart, so I hang on a little too long, is usually my MO. But sometimes it's like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to take that energy and refocus it. And maybe that's what Jewel wants to do. Wasn't her greatest season. She said that herself. Did not meet my own metrics. And maybe for Jewel, it's worth a reset. To get back to her game. And if that's the case, which again, it's seeming like that's the case, then I think the only thing that makes sense for me is that this isn't just a 2024 thing, that even while she was performing to where she was the scoring champion, that maybe there were things even as she was performing well, but the team was losing, that weren't working for Jewel Lloyd.
And I know that we're not putting her in a retirement home in Florida, but she is gonna be heading to Florida soon.
She is, yes. What a transition. So we can wrap up talking about Unrivaled. I said Roberta, I'm sorry. Roberta, dang.
I know, right? I'm proud of that
one. Yes, she will be heading to they're saying Miami, but it's a little inland.
Branderton.
It's a little inland. which is fine. But Unrivaled is coming. I officially got my confirmation for credentials, so I'm really excited.
Woohoo.
Things are going to start off. There's going to be I will not be down there for the 8th. I'll be making my way back from Seattle, but I think that we might start seeing some content about the facility around like the 8th or something like that. And then the 16th seems to be, which is a Thursday, I believe, the big media day. And then we have the first games on Friday, January 17th. And then Saturday, January 18th. I think it's going to be really excited. We won't see Kelsey Plum. She stepped away. I also did wonder that because again, her retirement, her jersey retirement weekend is opening weekend of Unrivaled. I don't know that had anything to do necessarily, but she will not be, she will not be with Unrivaled this year. We do have, we've got Jackie, AT, Money Martin. I love how they're using their nicknames.
Me too.
We've got Steph Dolson, obviously Brianna
Excited for Dolson.
And we've got Stewie and Nafisa Collier. Skylar Dickens Smith will be there.
And half of the Indiana Fever.
Half of the Indiana Fever. I mean, Marina Mabry, of course, Sabrina Ionescu finally saying that she will compete. You mentioned Brittany Griner earlier. Satu and Sab are going to be on the same team. The Phantom, and then we're gonna see the Point God. So I'm curious to see what a little bit more rest for Chelsea Gray is gonna look like. And yeah, we will also we'll see Jewel Lloyd. And I think it's gonna be interesting to see what her demeanor is like, but then also how she plays basketball. We won't see Nneka, which is too bad, but she'll be busy trying to, make the world a better place. So we will that. But I'm curious to see if there are any players who are not playing in Unrivaled who are just gonna pull up and watch what's going down.
I think so. I can see. Oh no, Gabby is in Europe. I do think some players are gonna. I feel like Asia is gonna pop up there. I feel like Nneka. It should be on Nneka's interest to go there, and even familiarize herself with the business side of it as president of the WNBPA to see like, hey, if they can do that, what can we start pushing in our negotiations. I think Caitlin Clark is going to go watch her friends. To be honest, you have the Indiana Fever players, you have Money Martin, so I do think she's gonna show up there. I feel like there are gonna be lots of WNBA players who are going to make their way down to their way down to Florida, and I'm very excited to watch Sabrina play. I think she's gonna do really great. I am very excited to see what the game format is gonna be because it's not 3x3 and it's not 5-on-5, and it sounds more like 5-on-5 but played in with 3 players on the court. So
yeah, it's gonna
I'm
be
very excited about it.
I can't wait to see Rakia. I think Rakia was kind of handcuffed by LA.
Me too.
I still think that she has the potential to be one of the most dynamic players from her class, and that's with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. I still think she has the potential to be dynamic. So,
what team do you think is more likely to? Which team do you think is the favorite? It's the main contestant, Erica.
Oh, in Unrivaled?
Yeah. Contender, I mean, not contestant.
No, I know what you meant. I actually am also really excited to see Aaliyah Edwards. So, and it's maybe because I have their roster open, but the team missed.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
I mean,
think the
again,
miss.
Rakia and Aaliyah alone, I just want to see them be able to ball, like not have to worry about a thing. I think this is going to be a great reset for Sloot. And then you have Stewie, who's reunited with Sloot, but
Yeah,
also reunited with Jewel. And
yeah,
then you have most people's most improved player, Dejanay Carrington. You had a
yeah.
fantastic season. I've gone into detail about who I voted for most improved player, but that is, I mean, I have always enjoyed Dejanay's game. I interviewed her multiple times over the last season. So I really like it. Another team, I have to go with, I think, Phantom, because
Oh,
I just think, like, I don't know how many games they're gonna win, but I think
yeah.
it's gonna be exciting to watch. Because
Oh,
there's gonna
yeah.
be a lot of sass one way or another with that
Yeah.
team. Eugene is
Yeah.
gonna be like the peacekeeper, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with you on the miss, but I think that the runner up is going to be the Lunar Owl.
yeah, I think the real answer, yeah, is probably that. No surprise, the co-founders teams are pretty
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I
both, yeah.
what do you think of the laces? I think the wild card here for me
Like,
is Kate Martin and probably Steph Dolson. Um,
hmm. Do
I
you
mean,
mean the ones that are going to stand out?
the ones that are gonna sway this team one way or another. I mean,
I agree. I agree.
I
I
mean,
don't think that Tiffany Hayes could have
everyone
a hit
that could
factor.
be interesting too. I mean, you have everyone else is all gas, no brakes. I mean, Kayla McBride does it in a really interesting way, but we've gotten to see her game kind of, I don't want to say evolve, but I think she's gotten back to her game under in
Mm,
Minnesota as compared to the
mm,
Aces.
mm-hmm.
So you've got Jackie, Tiff Hayes, Kayla McBride, Alyssa Thomas, Kate Martin, and Steph Dolson. Like, that is
Yeah.
a team that
So
you are gonna have to go into the ice bath after you play them.
yeah, because I'm thinking you have four guards, and then you have Big Mama and AT. I feel like they could struggle a little bit with the in the paint, especially
Mhm.
when they get BG's team, Aaliyah Boston's team, because with 3x3, the thing is that if you are under the basket, then if you're able to grab rebounds, you have a huge advantage.
Yeah,
If you are
that's
too
true.
small of a team, you have a disadvantage because of the smaller side. You can have an advantage on the speed, but you need to have a really good big on a
Well, is
3x3
it
team.
3x3? Because now I honestly don't think I've ever,
3x3,
well, it's
not
3x3,
3x3.
but is it full court? Because that's different. Because 3x3 half court and 3x3 full court are different.
Yeah,
So 3x3 half court or just full court, half court. Because if you're talking about rebounding, rebounding is not completely, but somewhat different when if you have people who are shooting from the perimeter, then that shot is more likely to bounce all the way out than to drop down. So there's that also to consider, like
yeah.
how far are the rebounds going? Um,
Yeah, I think because it's a 3-on-3 compressed court, a compressed 5-on-5 court, uh, the key is going to be filling spaces, uh, because you're going to have a lot of space, and I'm very curious as to how the game's going to be played because it's 3-on-3. It's not the FIBA 3x3. It's 3-on-3 based on some 5-on-5 rules, compressed court. It's gonna be something completely new, and I feel like players are gonna figure out as they go. Honestly.
yeah, I think it's interesting. It is okay, a modified full court. Okay, that's what I thought because
Yeah.
that changes how I think about rebounding. What team was I looking at? Oh, Vinyl? Oh no, how I feel about that team.
Nah.
Now this team can run you to death.
Exactly. Exactly.
This team can run you to death for sure. They're gonna have crazy pace. Like the pace is insane. And Teaspoon is the coach. Oh my gosh, they're gonna just pound you like in the face. Nothing but heart and passion in the face. I'm curious to see though, like what that's gonna look like.
It's a compressed.
Just catching up on some of the comments, y'all. It is spicy in the comments. I love.
I know.
This is great. Yeah, this is where
Arika.
Because she fitting to take another MVP, just like she does every time it's USA versus the WNBA All Stars. Arike's like, just run me my money, thank you.
Yep.
I love it. Well, I mean, we had a really. I love that there are times where we have most of the time we have our whole rundown, we have our notes, and then there's a topic that we focus on. And I love that. I love that about the people who come to join us live, even though y'all try to dog me and my new witness. They
were coming for you today, Erica.
Always. And that's why in the background, at least for now, I get to have the championship.
Oh no! Oh, that's true.
Yeah. All right. So I know Storm fans, y'all got 4 of those, but like, let me eat. Okay. Let me live. That life. All right.
Hey, you waited for this for a long time.
That's it. So let me have my moment. No, jokes aside, we really appreciate y'all coming on. We were figuring this out, like what would work with our schedules. And we were like, should we do this on January 1st? And I was like, heck yeah. Like everyone did their partying and now they're going to work another party where they can sit down, have a good time, have some laughs. And that's what we did. So that's the culture that we're trying to create here. We will be back. I will be in Seattle. So Roberta, you and I might link up, but we didn't want to pressure and do a podcast.
That's true.
I've got a lot of hockey stuff to do while I'm in Seattle this trip, but hopefully we'll get to link up next week. I'm going to mention it again. I hope you're ready. Got to get up a podcast for New York Liberty fans. I saw a comment about Leonie Fibish. We're doing our deep dive into Leonie Fibish.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
Woo, man.
I'm excited for that.
Man, what I'm just so excited. I'm so excited to talk about Leo, a game changer. We talked about Niara on the last deep dive episode with Brian Florentin. We're going to get into Leo. Also, we're going to talk eventually to the founder of Beyond the W. They have their podcast coming back. Maureen Irat, who is an OG. You want to talk about an OG for the WNBA? Had a great interview with Skylar Diggins-Smith way back in the day and is finding her footing again. So we're going to do some of that. This is going to be interesting, Craig. I honestly don't know, but I think I think we just see that there's so much passion now for individual players, and that carries over wherever they go. So I think that's what's going to be interesting. Fourth, I think I got at least like 6-8 plugs in today, and I'm happy. But that's because all of this Tempestagi talk, Gotta Get Up, our newsletter, the Women's Basketball Roundup, these are all things that we're putting out more consistently now. We're part of Black Rosie Media. We've got some affiliates and some sponsors lined up for the newsletter. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that we're going to do, especially now that we're in 2025. So make sure you stick with us. Our next deep dive, I think I don't know that we officially decided, but we're going through starters. So that would make Ezzy the next
Ezzy. I'm excited. I love Ezzy. How can you not love Ezzy?
I mean, and again, we get to talk about the Olympics. I'm going to have to scrub my files and find some audio. I spoke to Ezzy a bunch of times to the point where she was like, you want to talk to me, don't you? I was like, I do. Every time I saw a Liberty player, a Storm player, I always talk to them. To the point where Sab thought she got away from me once. She's like, oh, you made it. I was like, I sure did. She's like,
And I'm very excited to see your unrivaled content. little
I'm
challenge
excited.
that I'm not going, but I'm trying to make my way to Brazil, so priorities. So
Of course, that makes sense.
yeah.
That makes sense. Well, we will be there. I'm planning to drop through a few times because I head back to Florida for some hockey stuff, and it overlaps a little bit with Unrivaled. We also have Angelica Rodriguez, who we have
Ooh.
some fun stuff that will be definitely women's sports adjacent, but more on the cultural side. So we have some of that we have coming in 2025. So make sure you stick around. If you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, so anytime we go live or have a new video, you can get a notification. Just make sure you turn on the notifications. That will happen for Unrivaled, all of the things we have. And please do subscribe to the Women's Basketball Roundup. That is our newsletter. It is 100% free. Brian Florentin, he kind of steers the ship on that one. And I come in with a little bit of NCAA stuff. As a matter of fact, speaking of California, right, or the West Coast, Sharman Smith, I spoke to Sharman Smith today, and I'm going to have a Q&A style talking about the Raising the Bar Invitational, which is in its fourth year. And it was really interesting to talk to Sharman Smith, former New York Liberty assistant coach. But it was interesting to talk to her about how that invitational came together, how quickly she thinks she can get Dawn Staley to that invitational, and so much more. But Roberta, thank you for joining me here on the very first day of 2025. We had a great conversation about Madam President, as we put in there, but let people know where they can find you.
I am on
The hate.
Twitter X. It's Roberta WBB, and then there is Beta underline basket. If you wanna subscribe to Beta Basket in English.substack.com. I've been doing a lot of writing in English now. I used to do only in Portuguese, but I got excited that people like what I write. Been working on a lot of self-confidence. I did report on that already. There's a story out about her coaching Brazil. I'm definitely going to be covering it. I was in the press conference. So and I love that it's like the Storm combining with Brazil, which are like two of my favorite things to cover. So yeah, just very excited about all that. I hope people start following international basketball more with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, again, you can follow me at Black Rosie Media. If you like hockey and you like Seattle or the Pacific Northwest, then follow Locked On Kraken, which I'm going to be folding under Black Rosie Media in this year in 2025. So we'll be doing a little bit more cross promotion. So if you like hockey, you can follow that. We'll also have some more women's hockey coverage at Black Rosie Media. And, I will be doing some writing from Unrivaled and from my conversation with Sharman Smith for CBS Sports, and, trying to do some really deep dives, getting to do some more features for CBS is what I hope to do. Yes, it is Aloysius. It's time for the Storm Wave. There's not really, we do the Ellie Wave on the other podcast that I will not mention again. A podcast for New York Liberty fans, but we're just gonna piece it out, right? We're not gonna storm freeze you out. We're gonna wish you a happy new year.
Happy New
and
Year.
we'll see you soon if you head to Climate Pledge Arena for some hockey. Thanks for joining us. Next time we're talking about Ezzy. Peace out, everybody.